Hi, I'm Darlene. I'm 66, and until recently, I thought I was just helping my son get back on his feet. Then one morning, he handed me a new lease for the basement I helped him buy, double the rent, to support Lulu, their dog, and his influencer wife. They turned my kindness into content, my home into a set, and my silence into profit. But the worst part? It wasn't the rent. It was realizing I'd been edited out of my own family's story. What happens when the woman who built the house is no longer welcome inside it? The morning light sliced through the kitchen blinds, casting thin gold bars across my tile floor. I was tending to my succulents as I did most mornings. The Arizona heat hadn't reached its worst yet, and I relished these quiet moments with the plants that never asked for more than water and patience. That calm broke with a soft knock. Tobias never knocked like that, measured, like a landlord instead of a son. I wiped my hands on a dish towel and opened the door. "Morning, Mom," he said, shifting his weight from foot to foot like he was rehearsing. "Can we talk for a sec?" He stepped inside before I answered. That alone told me it wasn't just a talk, it was a decision already made. "We've been reviewing expenses," he began, "and we're going to need to raise your rent. It'll be $1,400 a month starting next cycle, just to keep up with everything." The number hit like a backdraft. I blinked. "From 800? I asked calmly, as if I were confirming a grocery total. "That's quite a jump." "Well," he rubbed his neck, "cost of living's going up, utilities, food, life stuff, you know?" No apology, just logistics. I smiled the way women my age have learned to. Warm enough not to escalate, firm enough not to dissolve. "Of course," I said. He looked relieved. I didn't ask what life stuff really meant, but I didn't have to wait long. Later that day, I asked him again, gently this time, over tea. "Is there a particular reason for the rent increase?" He shifted uncomfortably in his chair, tapping at his phone like it held the right words. "Well, Lulu's therapy is getting expensive," he finally said. "And Bryn's growing her content platforms. There's filming equipment, editing software, her dog's calming oils. It adds up." I nodded slowly. Not at the expenses, but at the shift. I wasn't a mother helping her son. I was a tenant funding an influencer and her pampered dog. I didn't argue. I didn't raise my voice. But I felt something unravel in me. Not loud, not immediate. Just a quiet detachment, like a page being slowly peeled away from a book's spine. That night after dinner, I sat with a cup of chamomile and let the past replay itself. It wasn't so long ago that I co-signed the mortgage for this very house. Tobias had been fresh out of a rocky job stint, and I just retired. "It's temporary," I told myself, "just until he stabilizes." Helping him buy this house wasn't a gift. It was a vote of confidence, a mother's way of saying, "I believe in your future." But belief doesn't show up in paperwork. Names do. And mine was never added to the title. That was the first compromise. Then came the finished basement. I'd move in, just until things smooth out. That was 4 years ago. Scrolling Facebook later, I came across a familiar face. Bryn, smiling in front of her matcha latte. Her caption read, "So grateful to be able to work from home, create content, and be fully supported." The emojis stung more than the words. My support wasn't just emotional, it was literal. Rent from my retirement savings, meals cooked when their schedules overlapped, watching Lulu when they had brand meetings. She had 200 followers, last I checked, but somehow I was the one footing the bill for her dreams. I closed the app and stared at the wall for a long while, not in sadness, in inventory. The next morning, I wrote the check for $1,400. No memo line, just my name, cursive and clean. When Tobias picked it up, he said, "Thanks, Mom, you're the best." I smiled again, same one as yesterday. "Let me know if you need anything else," I replied, handing it to him like I was handing over the last part of my spine. He nodded, already distracted by his buzzing phone, and walked away. I stood at the window, watching the morning traffic slide by, each car going somewhere, being someone. I stayed in place. Later, a knock at the front door pulled me from the silence. A delivery man stood with a large box. It was addressed to Bryn Atlee Productions. I signed for it and set it by the stairs. The return label read, "Studio Lighting Kit, Pro Edition." I stared at the box for a long time. It glowed in the hallway like a beacon of irony. As I turned to go back downstairs, I thought, not angrily, not bitterly, just factually, what else am I paying for and not supposed to know? The box from Bryn's studio lighting kit was still sitting by the stairs the next morning. I didn't touch it. I just stepped around it as I made my way to the kitchen for coffee. Tobias's iPad was on the counter, unlocked. Mine was updating overnight, and I needed to double-check a pharmacy email. I tapped into Safari, but before I could even type, a banner slid across the top of the screen. Family chat. 4. New message from Bryn. Curiosity didn't even have time to knock. My finger moved on instinct. She's sweet, but it's like having a walking guilt trip around. Emotional weight is still weight. That was her message. But it wasn't the words that held me hostage. It was what came next. Tobias replied, "Yeah, it's getting to be a lot." I stood in that kitchen, surrounded by family photos and old grocery lists I'd written. My hands didn't tremble, but something inside me went very still, like a pond the moment before the first winter freeze. I set the iPad down, untouched again, and walked back downstairs. By breakfast, the tension had settled into the drywall. Bryn chirped from her seat, feeding Lulu tiny bits of boiled egg. "So, I'm thinking of carving out a little pet sanctuary for Lulu in the living room," she said. "She gets overwhelmed when there's too much open space, you know." Tobias nodded, barely looking up from his phone. Bryn added, "Maybe your stuff downstairs could be more psyche. Choro super psyche, and con a naumard durosat we continue to Lulu who has clarity in her environment." I looked down at my toast. It was too brown on one side, cold on the other. Like everything in this house lately, off, but no one mentioning it. "Sure," I said. That was all. The rest of the day unfolded quietly. Tobias left to run errands. Bryn was upstairs filming her Day in the Life of a Creator Wife vlog. I busied myself with laundry. Folding towels had always soothed me. Creases lined up, corners matched, order imposed. From the hallway above, Bryn's voice drifted down, not loud, but clear enough. "We just need her to start thinking it's her idea to leave." There was a pause, a softer reply. I couldn't tell if it was Tobias or her camera assistant, but I knew what I heard, still folding, still silent. I placed the towels back in the basket. I didn't frown, didn't blink more than necessary. I just noted it. That evening, I moved through the hallway to get a book from my reading chair. My foot caught on something new, an elevated pet feeder with 2 ceramic bowls, one labeled Lulu, the other water only. Beside it, a neat little card, calligraphy and all. "Please don't move Lulu's zone. She's adjusting." This was the entrance to my section of the house. I was being asked to enter my own space by stepping over dog bowls. I didn't move them. Dinner that night was meatloaf, mashed potatoes, and a side of kale salad that Bryn insisted she sourced organically. We sat in near silence, save for her humming, when Tobias reached for seconds. She launched into a conversation about emotional hygiene, something she'd picked up from a podcast. I mean, some people don't even realize the kind of energy they bring into a space, she said, sipping kombucha. Tobias chewed slower, but nodded. It's exhausting, she added, laughing softly. Like, you walk into the room and suddenly it's heavy. My fork hovered mid-air. Bryn didn't look at me. She didn't have to. Tobias still didn't speak. I set my utensils down and placed the napkin gently over my plate. Excuse me, I said, standing. My knees creaked in the quiet. No one stopped me. Back in my room, I sat at my desk. The lamp gave off that warm yellow glow I always preferred to the harsh overheads. The same light I'd used to help Tobias with his homework years ago. The same desk where I once drafted lesson plans before retiring. I opened the bottom drawer and took out a lined notebook. It was still blank. I flipped to the first page and wrote the date. Then I began, not because I had a plan, not because I needed proof for anyone else, but because I wasn't losing my memory and I wasn't losing my mind. Not yet. I used to think love meant saying yes. Yes to helping. Yes to staying. Yes to trusting. I thought it lived in the sacrifices we make, not the contracts we sign. But lately, I've been questioning whether that's love or just what people call it when they want you quiet and useful. It had been a restless night. After scribbling a few more lines in the notebook I'd started, I found myself replaying a moment I hadn't visited in years. Tobias in his 30s, standing on my front porch, voice shaking a little as he asked if I could help him get approved for a mortgage. He and Bryn had just gotten engaged. He said it'd be temporary. He'd refinance in both our names later. He needed someone who believed in him. And I did. Of course, I did. The next morning, I woke up thinking about those old documents. Something in my chest itched, more memory than instinct. I went into the spare room where I kept my older files, still neatly boxed, untouched. I thumbed through folders labeled with past tax years, old insurance forms, receipts from home repairs I'd helped cover. Then I saw it. Property documents, Tobias Raynard. My name sat beside his on the original loan approval. I felt a small twinge of relief, but it didn't last. There was another paper tucked behind it, dated just a few months later. A refinancing form. Tobias's name. Only Tobias's. I wasn't on it. I stared at the signature line. My name never made it there. I wasn't removed. I was erased. That evening, while trying to decide whether I should bring it up, the lights in my room blinked twice and went out completely. At first, I assumed a fuse had blown, but then I noticed the hallway light was still on. So were the ones upstairs. I made my way up carefully and found Tobias in the kitchen with a glass of water in his hand. He didn't seem surprised to see me. "Oh," he said, like I'd walked in on something private. "Yeah, we had to cut power to the basement for a bit. Lulu was having another episode. The humming from the fridge downstairs. It was setting her off. You could have told me," I said. My voice wasn't sharp, but it wasn't small either. He gave me a sympathetic look, the kind people give when they think they're right, but want to seem gentle about it. "We figured it wouldn't bother you too much." "It's just," for a few hours. I nodded, walked back down the stairs without another word, and made myself a sandwich in the dim light of the window. The mayonnaise was warm, the bread too soft. I chewed anyway. That night, I brought up the outage. Would it be possible to avoid turning off the power in the future without letting me know? Bryn was curled on the couch with a hot towel on her neck. She glanced at me over her shoulder and smiled. Of course, she said. Totally fair. Lulu's healing is just very fragile. You know how dogs are with energy shifts. She needs consistency. She said it like I was the one disrupting the ecosystem. I returned to my room without finishing the tea I'd made. It tasted like guilt anyway. The next day, I pulled the folder from the drawer again, needing to confirm I hadn't misread it. But there it was, in black and white. No signature from me, no co-ownership, just a single name on a single line. His. The realization wasn't loud, it was steady. This wasn't my home. I didn't live in a space I shared with my son. I was renting an illusion, one that cost me not just money, but memory, dignity, presence. I closed the folder and returned it to the drawer like someone replacing ashes back into an urn. My hands lingered on the handle for a beat longer than necessary, and I whispered, just to myself, just to the silence, I gave him a house. He gave me a warning. If this was his way of protecting me, why does it feel like exile? I was pouring coffee when I heard Bryn upstairs, her voice bright and rehearsed. She was pacing with a kind of energy only people who've never had to apologize carry. I didn't mean to listen, but the vents carry sound better than intention. It's going to be a wellness-centered series, she said. Grounded, family-focused. People love seeing real-life dynamics. It makes us look humble, human. There was a pause. Then I heard it. We'll include Mom, too. It makes us look grounded. I stood still, holding the ceramic mug with both hands, not trembling, just still, like a fixture. That word, include, should have meant connection. In that moment, it felt like set dressing. Later that week, I found myself in the kitchen with a basket of towels. Bryn had asked if I'd mind folding a few things in the background of her Sunday reset vlog. She was filming at the counter, narrating a protein shake recipe like it was a TED Talk. I sat at the table, folding with care, not quite knowing what I was participating in. I didn't speak. I didn't look up. When it was over, she smiled and said, "Perfect. That looks so natural." The next morning, curiosity got the better of me. I checked her Instagram. The video was posted with the caption, "Sunday chores with the most supportive MIL ever." There I was, arms mid-fold, blurred slightly for aesthetic effect. The comments came quick. "Goals! She's so lucky to have you. OMG, your MIL is such a vibe." I wanted to throw the phone. Instead, I placed it face down and pressed my thumb against the table to remind myself I was still here. That afternoon, I brought it up, gently. "Bryn," I said, as she was organizing props for her next shoot, "do you think maybe filming me folding laundry was a bit much? It's just, some things feel personal." She didn't even look up. "It's about authenticity, Darlene. People crave realness. This isn't scripted. It's organic content. You should be proud to be part of something that's actually building a platform." Tobias was at the sink. He didn't chime in, just rinsed a glass like that was the only responsibility he had. "Right," I said. Bryn turned, finally meeting my eyes. "You know," she said, all warmth and veneer, "it's really amazing that you're adjusting to all this so well. A lot of women your age can't even figure out how Instagram works." That night, I heard laughter drift down from their room. I was in bed, lights off, pretending I was asleep. She thinks social media isn't a real job, Bryn said. Then Tobias, let her feel included. That's all she wants. I turned over, my back to the wall, my face to the emptiness. It wasn't what they said. It was how they framed it like kindness. That kind of kindness is just insult in a prettier dress. The next morning, Bryn popped her head into my part of the house with a smile. Totally spontaneous, she said, but Lulu's being adorable. Want to help me feed her? I'll just film a little clip. I nodded. She recorded me placing kibble into Lulu's ceramic bowl, cooing softly like I wasn't being watched. I smiled like it was my first time pretending, but inside I felt like someone dressing for a funeral that wasn't being acknowledged. Later, I opened my notebook and wrote, "Even clowns get tired of face paint." I didn't reread it, just closed the book and left it on the nightstand like a half-finished warning. By midweek, I watched one of her YouTube uploads. I was in the frame, twice, folding, feeding, background blur, never speaking, never named, just present. And in that silence, something broke. I wasn't being shared. I was being used. If I vanished from this house, would they even edit me out? I was carrying laundry to the machine when I heard my name, not in conversation, not in kindness, but floating through the house like perfume that turns rancid once it lingers. Bryn was live again. "And sometimes it's hard," she was saying, voice cracking just enough to be convincing. "You try to be a good wife, a good daughter-in-law, but no matter what, it's never enough." I stood at the hallway's edge, just out of the camera's frame, watching her sit in perfect lighting, eyes glistening like she timed the tears. I know she means well," she whispered, leaning in for intimacy, "but there's a difference between helping and hovering." The chat lit up. I could see the comments pop on screen from where I stood. "Stay strong, girl. In-laws can be toxic too. You don't owe her anything." She didn't say my name, but she didn't have to. Her audience knew the character I was playing. I backed away without a sound. The laundry basket rested heavier in my arms than it had moments before. That evening, Tobias casually mentioned how intense the live stream had been. "People really felt for her," he said, spooning quinoa into a bowl. I asked, "Did you?" He paused, shrugged. "It's just been stressful for everyone. Maybe just give her some space." Not once did he ask if any of it was true. Not once did he ask how I felt. I nodded and sipped my tea. My silence was an agreement. It was containment, like pressing a lid over a boiling pot. The next morning, while dusting the kitchen counter, I found a paper tucked beneath Bryn's planner. I didn't go looking. It was just there, poking out like something wanting to be seen. Rehearse scene. Mom-in-law critiques Bryn's cooking. Bryn tears up. Camera angle 2. No commas, no corrections. Just intent, printed and underlined. I stood there, staring at the sentence like it was a foreign language. But I knew what it meant. I was no longer a person in this house. I was a prop with dialogue, except I hadn't even been given lines. I folded the paper carefully, like it was fragile, and took it back to my room. I placed it in my notebook between pages of quiet reflections and unspoken thoughts. I didn't write anything else that day. The paper spoke loud enough. Dinner came, or rather, it came to them. I never received an invitation. No knock. No, "Are you joining us?" I ate alone in my kitchenette downstairs. Chicken salad, crackers, a glass of ginger ale. Through the air vent above, I heard Bryn's voice. "It's better this way. Less stress for everyone." Her tone wasn't cruel. It was resigned, decided. My fork tapped against the plate like a slow metronome. I wasn't angry. I was calibrated, calmer than I had any right to be. Later that night, I pulled out my journal. It was half filled now, pages bent slightly from the heat of my thoughts. I flipped to a blank one and wrote, "If they want to cast me, let it be as the one who walks out, not the one who claps from the corner." Then I took the script note and slid it into an envelope. I labeled it in neat, deliberate handwriting, in case I forget who I am. I sealed it with a single piece of tape, not because I needed to hide it, because I needed it to stay intact. The next morning, I pulled out an old camcorder from my closet. It still worked. The battery was low, but the charger was still tucked in its case like it had never aged. I plugged it in, not because I was planning some great reveal, not because I wanted revenge, because I needed to see myself through a lens I could control. Next time they film, I'll be holding the lens. I found the envelope on the floor just after sunrise. It had been slid under my door. No knock, no explanation. Just the word urgent typed neatly in the corner. I opened it slowly, already knowing it wouldn't be anything good. Inside was a formal lease agreement, bolded at the top. Tenant, Darlene Bratcher. Tenant. I scanned the pages, my eyes catching on one clause in particular. No additional pets or unauthorized guests allowed in the lower unit. Lulu's name was nowhere to be found, of course. But mine was, in black ink, labeled and regulated, like I was the unpredictable one. Even the dog had more rights in this house than I did. I carried the papers to the kitchen, where Tobias and Bryn were finishing their smoothies. "You slid this under my door?" I asked, keeping my voice even. Tobias didn't look up right away. When he did, it was with the forced calm of someone who knew this conversation would come. "It's just to keep everything clean and documented," he said. Bryn chimed in, like she was smoothing over a misunderstanding. "It's standard for everyone's protection. Don't take it personally." Don't take it personally. I folded the papers carefully, tucked them back into the envelope, and walked out without another word. By late afternoon, I was cleaning the upstairs hallway, trying to keep busy, when my elbow accidentally nudged one of Bryn's ring lights. The stand wobbled, then toppled, landing with a crash against the tile. Bryn came running in. "Oh no," she gasped, as though I'd knocked over an altar. She picked up the base like it was a wounded animal. "I'll check if insurance covers it," she said. "If not, I'll have to invoice you." Her voice was saccharine, legal. She didn't wait for a response before turning away. Later, a text came through. "If insurance doesn't cover the stand, I'll send you an invoice. Just easier that way. Just easier that way." I stared at the message longer than I should have, not because I didn't understand it, but because I understood exactly what it meant. She wasn't just my daughter-in-law anymore. She'd become my landlord, my creditor. That night, I sat down with the lease again. One line stood out in italics. "We encourage harmonious cohabitation. Social media filming occurs between 9 a.m. 7 p.m. Please avoid background noise." I read it twice, then a third time. My existence had become a decibel to be managed. The next morning, I didn't say anything to Tobias. I didn't respond to Bryn's casual hello. Instead, I went to the copy shop and made duplicates of everything: the lease, the text message, the pet clause. I stapled them neatly and added a label to the top. in case they forget who made this house a home. When I got back, the door to the laundry room was locked. No explanation. I didn't knock. That night, after dinner alone, I sat at my desk with a yellow legal pad. I wrote the date in the top right corner and underlined it. Then I wrote, lease received without notice. Below that, no discussion, no negotiation, no acknowledgement of my prior contributions. I paused, staring at the words. I'd spent years putting up walls in this house, drywall, paint, trim. I helped pick the tile, chose the doorknobs, sealed the backsplash with Tobias over 2 late nights while Bryn researched visual branding for her brand. I built walls here once. Now they've turned them into cages, but I have pens too. The morning began with mint tea and a suggestion dressed as kindness. Bryn sat across from me at the dining table upstairs, hands clasped gently. Her smile stretched just a touch too long. She had that way of speaking where every word sounded like a compliment, even when it wasn't. You know, Darlene, she began, you've been holding so much for this family for so long. Maybe you'd benefit from a little time away, just to refresh emotionally. I said nothing, not because I didn't understand, but because I did. She continued, maybe go visit that friend you've mentioned. What's her name? Lorna, you deserve your own peace. I gave a small nod, folding the corner of my napkin under my palm to keep it from twitching. Peace wasn't what she was offering. She was trying to evict me in silk gloves. Later that day, I was rinsing dishes when Tobias walked in, his tone casual, too casual. We've been thinking, he said. Maybe the house is starting to feel a bit tight. I kept drying the plate in my hands, listening. You know, with Bryn filming and the brand stuff, there's just a lot of movement. Space gets tricky. I nodded again. He didn't ask if I was okay. He didn't say I'd always have a place here. He didn't even look up from his phone. They were carving me out of their story, one scene at a time. Friday evening came. I was in the basement reading when the music started. At first, I thought it was Bryn filming again, but the bass didn't cut off after 30 seconds. It swelled. Laughter followed. More footsteps. High heels on hardwood. I climbed the stairs, not rushing, just curious. I paused in the hallway. The living room was glowing. Ring lights, scented candles, cheese trays stacked like centerpieces. Bryn stood in a gold sequin dress, wine glass in hand, greeting guests like a local celebrity. Tobias was adjusting the lighting rig. There was no extra plate, no empty seat, no nod in my direction. Bryn glanced at me once. Her smile didn't falter, but her eyes asked me to disappear. I turned and walked back downstairs. My room was quiet, except for the muffled thump of the party above. I opened the fridge, grabbed a can of lentil soup, and heated it slowly on the stovetop. The hum of the microwave sounded steadier than anything upstairs. At the table, I ate alone. My fork scraped the ceramic bowl with every bite. It was the only sound that belonged to me. After dinner, I opened my notebook. The page was still marked from earlier in the week. I added a line. Sometimes they forget to pretend I matter. The ink bled just slightly on the edge of the paper. The next day, after another silent breakfast, I called Lorna. She answered after one ring. You okay? She asked. No, I said. But I'm getting there. There was a pause on the line, the kind that only comes with years of friendship. You've been quiet too long, Darlene, she said finally. They count on that. Make noise. Her voice wasn't loud. It didn't need to be. It landed deeper than any shout. I thanked her. We talked about light things after that. Her new garden bed, a neighbor's strange dog, but her words stayed with me, humming behind everything else. Later that evening, I sat at my desk and opened my laptop. I started a new folder and named it Exit Strategy, not a declaration, a preparation. I wasn't angry, not yet, but I was done being edited out of my own life. If I'm not invited upstairs, I'll start building a new house. I hadn't touched the safe deposit box in nearly 5 years. It sat behind thick steel, wrapped in the illusion of security, just like everything else I'd built with Tobias. But that morning, I took the bus downtown, clutching my keys tighter than I needed to. Inside the vault, I flipped through the labeled envelopes and pulled the one marked Refinance Tobias. My name wasn't on it, not even in the fine print. 2 years ago, he'd removed me quietly, notarized and final. No discussion, no warning. Just erased. The woman at the front desk smiled as I left. I nodded back, stomach hollow. I didn't need a lawyer to interpret what I'd just seen. I already knew the law of this house. It wasn't mine. That afternoon, I went to grab my winter coats from the storage closet in the upstairs hallway. A cardboard box was open just beside it, marked Declutter, Resale. Inside sat my wedding ring. The band was polished, sitting atop a folded doily I'd crocheted in 1986. There was a sticker on the plastic pouch, Vintage Gold, Resale Estimate Pending. It wasn't even about the value. It was the fact that they didn't ask. They didn't think. Or maybe they did, and that was worse. I didn't cry. I took out my phone, snapped a photo, and placed the ring back exactly where I found it. That night, I waited until the golden hour when the upstairs lights hit their peak, Bryn's usual live stream time. I didn't dress up. I didn't even brush my hair. I walked upstairs in silence, holding a copy of the refinance document in one hand, the ring in the other. They were mid-broadcast, surrounded by orchids, fairy lights, and curated vulnerability. Tobias looked up first, eyes wide, then stood as if blocking the lens might erase me. "Hey, Mom, can we talk later?" he whispered, off-camera smile frozen. "No," I said calmly, stepping into frame. "We're talking now." I placed the ring on the counter. "You left me out of the paperwork, out of the story. Now I'm writing the ending." The screen went black. Bryn had ended the stream. "Mom, we were going to tell you," Tobias started, voice low. "You were going to what? Explain why my name disappeared 2 years ago. Why my wedding ring is in a donation box." Bryn's face flushed. "It's not what you think. It was sentimental. I didn't think you'd even notice." "It's not about the ring," I said. "It's about place, in this house, in this family." My hands didn't shake. Not anymore. Tobias reached for the papers. I let him take them. They meant more in my hand, but they stung more in his. "I'm moving out," I said. "Mom, please." "No court will take me to trial. I've already lived the sentence." Bryn opened her mouth, but no words came. "The house is yours," I said, "but the legacy is mine, and I'm taking it with me." I placed the photocopies of the deed on the coffee table, right beside the ring. Then I turned and walked toward the door. There was no yelling, no last-minute hug, no desperate apology. I closed the front door behind me. No slam, no echo, just finality. You wanted the house. I hope it keeps you warm. The sun didn't greet me that morning. It simply appeared, like an obligation. The window in Lorna's guest room was too wide, and the mattress too soft, in all the wrong places. I tossed most of the night, not from discomfort, but from the ache of separation. There's a particular weight your body carries. After leaving behind a space you once called home, you can't sleep it off. I sat up slowly, my bones reminding me of their age, not with pain, but with memory. The guest robe was stiff, unfamiliar. The room, too, quiet. The silence wasn't peace. It was the kind of hush that follows a slammed door. After dressing, I checked the mail Lorna had gathered for me in a neat pile. It was mostly circulars and ads until one envelope caught my eye. My health insurance provider. I opened it with careful fingers. We regret to inform you that your policy has lapsed due to interruption in scheduled payments. I blinked once, then twice. I dialed the customer service number and waited. A woman finally answered. I asked her to explain. She paused, looked up my file. "Oh," she said, "it appears the bank account on file was changed 6 weeks ago. It no longer pulls from your original account." I knew exactly what that meant. Tobias had rerouted my automatic payments without asking. Again, he hadn't just taken my space. He'd taken my coverage. I thanked the woman, hung up, and sat with the letter in my lap for another 20 minutes. By noon, I was sitting across from a bank manager whose name I didn't recognize inside the same branch I'd walked into countless times before. I slid my ID across the desk and asked about the property loan. He hesitated, smiling too tightly, typing too slowly. "There's a refinance application currently under review," he said. "Filed by Tobias Raynard. You're not listed as a co-applicant." Was I ever? He scanned the screen again. "Initially, yes, but the most recent filing shows his sole ownership." "Was that processed before or after the deed change?" "After," he said, eyes softening. 2 months after, actually. He didn't say anything else. He didn't have to. The eviction hadn't just been emotional. It was financial and intentional. I walked out without thanking him. Later, I stopped at a small cafe I used to frequent on weekends. The barista still remembered my order. Half sweet chai, no foam. I sat by the window with my drink, watching my old neighborhood. 2 women at the table beside me were talking loud enough for half the cafe to hear. "I heard they're selling the house," one said. She said, "It's final theirs now, clean of drama." The other laughed. "That poor woman who used to live there. What was her name again?" I took a sip of my now cold chai. This is what erasure tastes like, lukewarm and overly sweet. That evening, back at Lorna's, I made myself a plate of roasted vegetables and couscous. I didn't turn on the TV. I logged into my YouTube account, more out of habit than interest. Bryn had just posted a new video. The thumbnail showed her in a flowing white dress, arms around Tobias. The title read, "Rising Through Change, a New Chapter." The video opened with soft piano music and words on the screen. Sometimes growth means letting go of the old to make space for the new. I watched it all. 10 minutes of curated sincerity. There was no mention of me, not even a pause where I once existed. But the void was loud. Her silence wasn't protective. It was performative. I opened my journal. Wrote 1 line. They needed me quiet. Now they'll have to live with my silence. I stared at the sentence until the ink dried. Then I flipped to the calendar app on my phone. I deleted the shared calendar Tobias and I had used for years. Birthdays, appointments, even reminders to water the garden I planted. Then I blocked his number. It didn't make me feel strong. It made me feel finished. The fallout wasn't loud, but the fracture was permanent. It was Lorna who sent the email. Subject line, "You should see this. No emojis, No preamble, just a link. I clicked without hesitation. It led to a real estate blog I used to skim when I still imagined downsizing someday. There, on the front page, was a spotlight feature. Rising local couple rebrands historic home, a new era of domestic influence. The photo showed Tobias and Bryn standing in front of the porch I painted. The caption beneath it read, Tobias and Bryn Reynard, sole owners, rebuilt from scratch. I didn't feel anger. I felt subtraction, not the kind that startles, the kind that's done so smoothly you don't realize until something doesn't balance. My name wasn't just gone from the deed. It had vanished from the narrative entirely. Later that afternoon, I opened YouTube. I already knew what I'd find, but I watched anyway. The latest video was titled, Welcome to Our Reimagined Home. Bryn walked through the house, each step choreographed to a piano score. This space has been such a journey, she said. We've worked so hard to create something that reflects who we are now, free, focused, forward. No mention of me, not even a nod towards the woman who laid the first tiles, who paid the first plumber, who held her breath through every inspection and co-signed every risk. The narrative hadn't been stolen. It had been rewritten. By early evening, I was sitting across from a lawyer, Lorna's friend, Mark. His office smelled faintly of wood polish and quiet decisions. We laid the papers out, the original loan, the refinancing notice, the messages from Bryn, the lease agreement, even the no pets clause. Mark didn't rush. He read. He nodded. There's a case here, he said. Maybe not for damages, but definitely for clarity. I nodded back. I'm not looking to sue, I said. I'm looking to document. He raised an eyebrow. I'm not interested in revenge. I just want it on record that I was here. The next morning, I wrote a letter. Not a legal document, a memory, sealed in ink. It wasn't addressed to lawyers. It wasn't even meant for public eyes. It was a letter to Tobias and Bryn. It began, I was here when the foundation cracked. I was here when the roof leaked. I was here before your plans had a permit and before your dreams had hashtags. I outlined what I paid for, what I built, what I signed, what I gave up. I ended it simply. I don't want your apology. I wanted your honesty, but I've survived without both. I mailed it without a return address. 3 days passed. Then came a ripple. A comment appeared under Bryn's newest video. Didn't your mother-in-law help buy that house? Why isn't she ever in your story? It got 2 likes, then 10, then thousands. I didn't respond. I didn't need to. The next comment said, the silence says everything. And for once, it did. Bryn posted no response. Tobias said nothing. But the view count froze, and the likes stalled. Sometimes image control slips, not because someone screams, but because someone stops whispering. I closed my laptop and stood up. The sun outside didn't shine any differently than the day before, but for the first time in months, I noticed the warmth on my shoulders instead of the chill behind me. You erased my name. Now the world is remembering it for me. The message came late, almost midnight. It wasn't from Tobias or Bryn, but from someone I didn't know, a woman with a cartoon avatar who followed Bryn's channels. It read, Are you really that controlling? Just curious, because she's never shown you in a good light. I stared at the screen. My thumb hovered over block, then reply, then nothing. I didn't answer. I didn't need to. But the sting, that lingered longer than I cared to admit. Even strangers were weighing in on a version of me they'd never met. The next afternoon, Tobias called. It was the first time I'd seen his name flash across my phone in weeks. I let it ring twice before answering. "Hey, Mom," he said. His voice was familiar, but it sat wrong. Like hearing your favorite song played just off key. "I just wanted to check in," he added. There was no apology in his tone, no remorse tucked into the silence. "Are you okay?" "I'm adjusting," I replied. That was all. It wasn't kindness. It was fact. He paused. "Bryn's been processing things. We're still figuring stuff out." "I'm sure you are." We didn't say goodbye, just disconnected. Two static lines pretending they'd never been tied. The next morning, I met Lorna for coffee. She picked a place with outdoor seating, the kind with wrought iron chairs and chipped blue tables that reminded me of better mornings. She ordered for us both. I let her. As we sipped, she looked at me for a long moment, then said, "Do you think you'll ever talk to them again?" I didn't rush the answer. "Maybe," I said, "but not because they ask, only if I decide I want to." She nodded slowly, as if confirming a truth she carried too. "Choice feels like oxygen," she murmured, and she was right. After so many months of treading water, choice felt like air in my lungs again. Later that afternoon, I walked past my old street. The dogwood tree in the front yard had bloomed early, its branches full and defiant. The house looked the same, paint untouched, windows bright. But something about it felt thinner, empty in places it hadn't been before. I didn't stop, I kept walking. Freedom doesn't always arrive with balloons or brass bands. Sometimes it's just the absence of need, the quiet refusal to knock again. That night, I opened my notebook and found the envelope I'd labeled weeks ago. In case I forget who I am. I didn't open it. Instead, I wrote a letter. This one wasn't to Tobias or Bryn. It wasn't even to Lorna. It was to the woman I used to be. "Dear me," I began, "you don't owe them everything just because you gave them everything." I didn't seal it, didn't plan to send it. I folded it neatly, slid it between the journal's pages, and closed the cover. As I did, I caught my reflection in the dark glass of the window. No makeup, no rehearsed expression, just a woman reclaiming her name, her breath, herself. I don't need them to name me. I've already remembered who I am. The light in my new apartment doesn't wake me. It waits. It spills gently through linen curtains, touches the hardwood without a sound. No heels pacing above, no barking, no staged dialogue for a live stream I never agreed to be part of. Just stillness, not emptiness, space. I rise, without urgency. The floor is warm underfoot. I don't reach for my phone first thing. I don't check for notifications or emails or mentions. I walk to the kitchen and brew coffee in silence. No one's waiting on me to smile into a camera. No one's watching but the walls, and even they feel kinder. As I pass the mirror in the hallway, I pause, not to adjust, just to see. No makeup, no effort to seem softer, no rehearsed expression to match someone else's narrative. Just my own reflection, plain, steady. I look like myself again. I don't need forgiveness. I didn't break anything. Clarity is what came instead, and it's been enough. By mid-morning, I'm unpacking the final box. It's labeled, in my handwriting, black ink, faded from sunlight and time. Legal, originals, plus notes. I sit on the floor and open it, expecting that old flutter of tension, but it doesn't come. I find the envelope, thick with printed contracts, correspondence, screen grabs. I remember when I thought I might need them to prove something. I don't anymore. I tear it in half, then again, and toss the shreds into the trash without ceremony. Winning isn't always proving you were right. Sometimes it's knowing when not to play. After lunch, I go for a walk. The weather's crisp, but kind. I don't need a map. My feet already know where I'm headed. I find myself back in the old neighborhood, not on purpose, but not by accident either. The house looks the same wreath on the door, same chalk-stained sidewalk. But there are new cars in the driveway. Through the front window, I spot a couple touring the space with a realtor, clipboard in hand, eyes darting from corner to corner like they're hunting for flaws they'll later call charm. I wonder what Tobias told them or what he left out. Then I let the thought pass. Life keeps moving. It doesn't wait for repair. It doesn't pause for reconciliation. It rolls forward, merciless and generous all at once. I turn and head home. As the afternoon softens into evening, my phone buzzes. One new message. It's from Tobias. Thinking of you today. Hope you're well. No punctuation, no apology, no context. Just a sentence that lands like a stone in water, ripples fading quickly. I don't respond. Love doesn't expire, but access to me does. Back inside, I pick up my journal for the last time. The pages are full, some tidy, some messy, all mine. I write the final line. I wasn't erased. I walked away, and that is not the same thing. I close the book, slip it into a drawer, put on my shoes. I need groceries. I need air. I need to keep living. The world outside doesn't know what I've survived, and it doesn't need to. I left quietly, but I live loudly, in my own way now. Sometimes the hardest goodbyes are the quietest ones. I didn't leave with fireworks or fists. I walked away with truth in my pocket and peace in my hands. I learned that boundaries aren't walls. They're bridges we build for ourselves when others stop meeting us halfway. If there's one thing I've taken from all this, it's that love given freely doesn't mean you owe your silence. Respect should never require erasing yourself. And healing. Healing isn't always loud. Sometimes it looks like eating alone without bitterness, or smiling at your own reflection and meaning it. Now, I want to ask you, have you ever had to walk away from someone you loved to protect the version of yourself you nearly forgot? Drop a 1 in the comments if the story touched your heart, or tell me where you're watching from. And if you didn't like it, that's okay too. Share your thoughts and let's talk about it. That's how we grow. If you found something real in this story, something worth remembering, go ahead and hit that subscribe button so you don't miss the next chapter. Because life keeps writing new ones, and I'll be right here turning pages with you.